Welcome to our discussion on Trump's tariff meltdown, folks. A real roller coaster of economic decisions and policy contradictions.
Absolutely. It's like a perfect storm of trade policies gone haywire, right?
Yep, exactly. So here we have a leaked call that, completely exposed how Trump's latest tariff stunt is causing chaos across the board.
And what stands out is his sudden, almost desperate appeal to CEOs telling auto companies not to raise prices. I mean, come on, that's not how economics works.
Right, it's like totally contradictory. He imposes a 25% tariff on imported cars and parts, even though
Yeah,
we
for
both
sure.
know that tariffs are taxes paid ultimately by domestic consumers and companies.
Exactly. It's almost as if he's trying to have it both ways. Inflict a cost on imports, then demand companies absorb that cost.
And when you really look at it, it's economic incoherence at its best. We've got tariffs normally working as a tool for protection or negotiating leverage, but here it's being used in a way that defies basic logic.
Yeah, you could say it's a sort of protectionism that backfires on American industries by, well, undercutting their own business models.
Right, exactly. And there's another twist. Ben Shapiro, renowned for defending GOP stances, appeared visibly rattled on his show when he broke down the news.
Yep, which is pretty interesting because, a guy like Shapiro is typically so adamant about Trump's policies. So when he admits that the auto tariff is massive and potentially harmful, it's a big deal.
Absolutely. It really shows that even staunch MAGA supporters are struggling to reconcile these tariff decisions with the practical economic impact. It's almost like watching someone hit a wall.
And the argument really boils down to this. If you impose a tariff, manufacturers normally pass that cost on to consumers, but Trump wants companies not to do that. How is that even supposed to work?
Exactly right. To put it simply, Trump's demand forces auto manufacturers into a corner. They're supposed to essentially give up profits or absorb losses each quarter, all to mask the tariff's effect.
That's like a clear case of conflicting messages from the top. And it's not just theory. It's been shown in several studies that such tariffs actually cost U.S. consumers and businesses billions.
Yes, and speaking of numbers, let's consider the broader economic fallout. Stock markets reeling, investors in a tailspin, and reliable studies pointing out that these kinds of tariffs may have cost tens of billions to the U.S. economy in previous scenarios.
Exactly. And it's not just about the numbers, it's about the underlying message. When even economic pundits and conservative commentators like Shapiro are showing signs of panic, it makes you question the strategy behind it, doesn't it?
It really does. Shapiro, who once claimed that Trump's erratic moves were part of a grand strategy, had to acknowledge that this tariff move targets American businesses, especially companies like Ford and GM, that manufacture in close proximity to international supply chains.
Right. However, isn't it interesting how some still try to spin it as protecting domestic jobs? I mean, even major studies and analysts have shown that such tariffs can lead to manufacturing job losses and disrupt supply chains.
Yes, that's a very important point. While his claim has always been that tariffs are beneficial, the evidence, including recent data, shows a net loss in jobs. Estimates even cite figures like 300,000 jobs lost and billions in economic damage. It's like putting out a fire with gasoline.
Exactly. It's a totally misguided strategy, and frankly, it borders on deliberate sabotage of the very workers Trump claims to protect.
Right, and let's not forget the leaked call itself. Here we have Trump speaking privately with auto industry CEOs, effectively trying to strong-arm them into a silence about the policy's true cost.
Yeah, that's pretty bold. I agree. But I have to challenge one point here. Some might argue that his approach was meant to be a form of protectionistic negotiation tactic, a sort of high-risk strategy that might have worked under different circumstances.
I get that perspective, but the reality here is that the economic fundamentals don't support that. Tariffs almost always force costs onto domestic economies. It's not just a bluff that you can call and then just wish away.
That's a solid critique. It reminds us that while sometimes political theater can camouflage policy, when it comes to economics, the numbers tend to speak for themselves.
Exactly. And as we see in this case, the mounting evidence, from market downturns to widespread industry strain, paints a picture of sheer economic disruption.
Right, and it's even more concerning when you understand that this isn't an isolated incident. Historically, US presidents have used tariffs more judiciously for clear strategic reasons, not this kind of chaotic retribution against globalization.
Yeah, and even though Tesla and Rivian have somewhat shielded themselves due to their production models, the broader auto industry, built on global supply chains, is left reeling.
Yep. It does make you wonder what this means for the upcoming election cycle. With Trump eyeing a return, this episode is a stark reminder that Tariff Man is back, and his policies could, unfortunately, inject more chaos into our markets.
Absolutely. It could be a bellwether for deeper instability. In many ways, it's like a preview of the potential economic missteps ahead if ideological loyalty continues to override sound economic strategy.
And that's not just a warning for economists, but for every American who might be indirectly affected by these decisions.
That's right. The whole debacle, from the leaked call to Shapiro's unexpected moment of panic, serves as a cautionary tale about policymaking without a backbone in economic reality.
And you have to question whether this kind of erratic decision-making will continue if it proves politically beneficial in the short term, despite long-term costs.
It certainly raises concerns for the future. There's a growing unease about returning to a mode of economic policymaking that's driven by personal vendettas rather than clear strategy or national interest.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this conversation really shines a light on the profound disconnect between political theatre and economic fundamentals. It's a fascinating but worrying phenomenon.
Absolutely. And as we keep watching these developments, it'll be crucial for all sides to demand policies that actually make sense economically instead of engaging in this kind of destructive brinkmanship.
Right on. Yep, here's hoping that future leaders learn from these missteps and prioritize stability over sensationalism.
Exactly. Let's keep our eyes on the data and hold decision makers accountable. Thanks for the engaging chat today.
Thank you as well. Always a pleasure delving into these issues.